The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Go Cowboys! This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Your war room for insider news and draft analysis from deep within the confines of Cowboys headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
The Dallas Cowboys select Michael Parsons. Woo!
And now, your hosts, Brian Broaddus, Jeff Kavanaugh, Kyle Yeomans, and David Hellman.
And good morning. It is, guys, it's all of a sudden starting to feel a lot more normal around here in January. News flying about coaching hires, which I was shocked that we got to this stage of January without more news on that front. Looks like the Broncos and Bears are filling their job openings. Sounds like that's going to have an impact on the Cowboys coaching staff, which is amazing timing because it's time to talk Senior Bowl. How are y'all doing this morning?
I'm doing awesome. Yeah, all it takes is one domino to fall. You know, all it takes is that one, and once the Denver one, I mean, there's talk about what Jacksonville is going to do, but with Byron Leftwich, though, you're looking at a situation where he's looking to bring personnel guys. So that's kind of a holdup over there. But when you get one, then all of a sudden the other ones start to fall. I think the thing is you had some new general managers that need to get up to speed, and I think that slowed things up a little bit.
So, and you know, there's reports out there that Dan Quinn might be staying with the Cowboys. I don't want to get too deep into that until we've had a chance to work on it a little bit more, but I think
what a journalist you are.
I mean, I don't want to sit here and go with stuff that we're reading on Twitter.
Tom Pelissero a liar to his face on the internet.
If anybody knows his stuff, it's probably Tom Pelissero. I just don't want to jump the gun, but I do think it's interesting because Brian, you know, like we're going to get into talking about these players.
Oh, I thought Dan Quinn had the Denver job. I don't know much.
You know what happens at places like Mobile.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is an interesting time of year. How could that potentially change things for the Cowboys? And again, we don't even know if they're going to go to Mobile.
Yeah.
But when you talk about guys hiring and changing jobs and stuff like that, how does that affect the beginning of this draft process as teams get ready to go down to Mobile?
Yeah, there's two things you can do in Mobile. You can take advantage of if you're a head coach that's looking for staff. You get inundated. You know, there's always guys that are kind of scouting you out. If you're a team that has openings at running back, offensive line, quarterback, whatever, maybe some new coaches are going to get opportunities, Matt Eberflus, guys like that go down there. It might be a bad situation. You might not want to go because you have everybody looking for a job and wanting to talk to you, and then you can't evaluate while you're down there is evaluate the players. So to me, it's really a kind of a twofold. You're there to look at the players, but maybe you do take the opportunity to set up a couple of interviews off campus with guys if you have some positions. Say, for example, if the Cowboys moved on from Joe Philbin as an offensive line coach and they went down there.
Trying to will that into existence.
It's the second episode
as I
in a row.
say, I'm just giving you an example of something that could happen.
Yeah.
If they were looking for that type, they could set up some guys, maybe some guys like a Mike Munchak or something like that from Denver. Some of these staffs that have openings, George Warhop at Jacksonville. These are coaches that are out of jobs that are good coaches. And maybe you take the opportunity to, after practice, hey, let's meet over here for lunch. We'll do a little interview and kind of get a little bit of an idea what's going on.
Kyle Yeomans also starting to feel a little bit more like January because we got approved to go to Mobile.
Boom.
Very excited about that.
How about that?
We'll miss y'all next week. I do. I miss our trips to what's the Oyster House down there?
Is it the Acme?
Winsel's.
Winsel's
Oyster House.
Acme's in New Orleans, right?
Yes, Acme is in New Orleans. Looking forward to
Brian,
that.
I'm surprised you're not going to be in a Winnebago just driving all the way down there.
You know, if they let me go in a Winnebago, I would. I'd absolutely go in a Winnebago.
If you didn't have
feats of strength, as you know.
If
that's
you didn't
my
have to
motto.
fill 5 hours of radio a day.
Yeah, I'd love to
do it
go
on
down.
the
I
road.
love the Senior Bowl. I love the Senior Bowl. I love the Combine. My two favorite places.
Fantastic segue into all right. So we can talk about Dan Quinn. We can worry about all that stuff later. But the Senior Bowl starts next week. Practices. We'll have a chance to look at some of these guys. What are your early thoughts on this roster? And I looked through it last night, knowing we were going to talk about it. I know this isn't. It's not a star-studded draft. At least it doesn't seem like it to me. But for what seems like the 6th or 7th year in a row, all the important quarterbacks are going to be there. What stands out to you from this roster?
Well, starting with quarterback, 6 of my top 7 quarterbacks are in Mobile. I mean, that's a pure thing off the top. I mean, this is, of course, early rankings in my regard, but 6 of the top 7. The only one that's not in Mobile was Ole Miss's quarterback who tore his ACL in the Sugar Bowl, in Matt Corral. So there are so many talented players, and it's not just quarterback, running backs, wide receivers. There's a lot of really good wide receivers. Pretty much every good senior outside of maybe Chris Olave from Ohio State, who you mentioned in the first show, is going to be there. Tight end. There are 8 really good tight ends that are going to be a part of the festivities down in Mobile. And usually you see it every once in a while. You'll have a good position group. Like a couple years ago, the defensive tackles were really solid, and Neville Gallimore was a part of that, but Javon Kinlaw was there. There were a bunch of guys in the mix in terms of that defensive line that were really impressive. This year, I really see it on the offensive side of the football, and a lot of really good skills positions that are going to be fun to watch and practice.
It's almost like a rite of passage to fall in love with a receiver or two during Senior Bowl practices.
Yeah, I think I counted, let's see, let me do this again. That's 5, 8, 10, 12. I got 12 second-round grades on guys that are playing in this game.
Wow.
So to me, and my only first-round guy, again, I'm not to the point where I've seen 200 guys or anything like that, but the 100 or the 60 guys I've seen, Lloyd, the linebacker from Utah, would be a guy that I'd be very interested. But, yeah, when you start to talk about defensive ends, there's a couple defensive tackles. Mathis from Alabama, I think, is a guy you're going to have to look at. Logan Hall from Houston, another defensive tackle. That's a 1 and a 3 right there. As far as the techniques, Jermaine Johnson Cam Thomas, these defensive ends, Sanders. I mean, there are some defensive ends in this thing, and plus these guards. If you're interested in a guard or a tackle with Zion Johnson, Kennard, we mentioned him as well. Penny, Falale. How would you say that? Falale.
Right off the jump, that sounds okay.
What position?
He's the Minnesota offensive tackle, and so to me, that's where. You mentioned the tight ends. McBride is a kid that I watched at Colorado State that I kind of like a little bit. They've done a really nice job down there with the roster and how they've put that together.
And you're a perfect person to ask. You've been involved in the draft process since the early 90s. It seems to me like the roster's a lot better overall than it used to be. Not this specific year, but even in the time since I started doing this, it seems like the Senior Bowl is getting a better quality of player to be willing to go. I mean, it blew my mind when they got Baker Mayfield to show up. I was shocked by that.
Yeah.
Why do you think that
he
is?
showed up. He didn't do a whole lot.
He still went. They still got him to go.
I think what's happened is that Phil Savage used to run the Senior Bowl, and to me there was, Phil didn't have. It was like a small committee of guys. The Senior Bowl has taken on a whole new, different look when it comes to the evaluation. Phil used to really rely on, like, the scouts telling him what guys, and then it came down to, okay, well then, hey, we have to extend invitations. I think now, if you look at the new regime and what they've been able to do there in Mobile, is that they've done a better job. They have a full-time, really, scouting department. They go to all these games. They have their own sets of eyes. They have personnel evaluations. So not only do you take what's going on from the input you get from general managers and scouts, you have your own input. And I think that's what's made the game so much better. And you've also had guys that have gone to the Senior Bowl, played, got exposure, had success, and it's actually helped their draft stock. So I think there's a lot of positivity about the Senior Bowl and what it is going forward.
Really good example of what you just talked about. What about Mac Jones last year? There was a lot of talk about him going early second round, maybe mid-second round as a quarterback out of Alabama, and then all of a sudden he goes to Mobile. Matt Rule is raving about this guy.
We spent 2 months talking about him as the number 2 overall pick.
And then he popped up there.
I know. Jeffrey, all of that said, though, Cowboys' first-round pick isn't going to be in Mobile, more than likely. More than likely, I feel like.
It could be if it's Lloyd. It could be if it's Lloyd.
Roger McCreary.
Could be. Well, just
Penning.
What are you looking for in these? I know you're not going to be able to go. I wish you were. But what are you looking for in these 3 practices?
What I care about the Senior Bowl week for is the level of competition is consistent and it's really, really good. And college teams, like offenses and defensives, they're all very, very different. What they ask people to do is very, very different. At the Senior Bowl, you strip all of that away and you say, all right, how about you versus him? The one-on-ones are the most fun part, right? Like let me see. Can you cover him? Can you get open on him? And so, like, guys who take the Georgia guys, right? They got Quay Walker, Channing Tindall, Devontae Wyatt. Like, they got a bunch of guys at the Senior Bowl. Their defense was awesome, and they had so many awesome players. And while I'm studying Nakobe Dean, their linebacker who's going to go in the first round, I keep making notes of check who the other linebacker is. Oh, wait, there's a different one. Check who that linebacker is. Oh, my God, there's another one because Nolan Smith is a pass rushing linebacker of theirs. And, like, every one of them, it's like, man, that dude can absolutely fly and that dude can absolutely hit. And so you get your eyes on all these different guys. And I guess back to my original point, I'm going to name one guy, Jalen Petrie. He's a safety at Baylor. I have no idea if he can cover.
No,
none.
He can't.
Because the dude plays the slot for them, and I don't think I've seen a snap of man coverage. So, like, he blitzes, he plays the run, he's super aggressive.
Got great instincts.
Yeah, he wants to break everybody in half. I have no clue if he can cover. In Mobile, you'll find out because they're going to make you.
Yeah.
And so it's just a great evaluating tool for guys who you haven't seen do certain things to see what do you got.
That's a really great point. And we'll see some linebackers work at edge probably. We'll see some like tweener edge guys do some linebacker drills.
Well, that's the thing with Jim Nagy, and we talk about him taking over, and he works with the coaches, the Lions, and what they're and the Jets. I mean, he's going to work with those coaches and say, "Hey, listen, we've got grades on these guys playing," and coaches and scouts will go up and ask, "Hey, could you give this guy some reps at defensive end?" Like, the other day, if Micah Parsons had gone to the Senior Bowl, that maybe Micah Parsons might have been a guy you've seen get some reps at rush end, and you'd said, whoa, I remember seeing Micah Parsons rush and kind of having that in your mind.
It's so good for the Cowboys that the draft process was so incomplete that year.
Well, in that he didn't play an entire
That's
year
what I'm
of
saying.
football,
Like
too.
if you had a more complete picture of who Micah Parsons was, where do you think he goes?
Top 4.
It's hard to imagine him
It's
falling
hard
past
because
Atlanta.
You also have to look back at the top of that draft. Like, I don't think Atlanta is upset about their pick.
Not at all.
I don't
No.
think Cincy's upset about their pick.
They're
I think
definitely not.
Maybe Sewell and Slater would flip-flop.
Yeah.
But doing that exercise is really fun because I thought the same thing. Like, Micah Parsons is freaking incredible. Surely he would go in the top 3. And you're like, wait, no, they'd probably still pick a quarterback.
Yeah.
That pick worked out great.
Don't-
that
but
one's working
New
out
York
great.
probably could have taken a linebacker there.
Don't you think
If it was Micah Parsons.
Kyle Pitts was fantastic, and I love Kyle Pitts, but don't you think most people would draft a 13-sack edge rush linebacker guy over a tight end?
No.
You don't.
Not-
I
not
never looked at
necessarily.
him as a tight end, so
That's fair.
that's
Like,
kind of what
Would you take Devin White over Travis Kelce?
I don't think Devin White's.
He's a double-digit sack guy. That's a good linebacker.
He has, but I think their skill sets are different. Like
Sure.
the Bucs don't use Devin
Yeah.
the way that the Cowboys use Micah Parsons.
I think the Cowboys had to use Micah Parsons because they didn't have a defensive end to rush.
Oh, I asked Dan that. I was like, "Is it fair to say that this only
Sometimes
happened
that-
because
yeah.
nobody was available?"
Sometimes out of necessity, you come up with great ideas.
What's that saying? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, but I just think they do a really nice job. The Senior Bowl we've talked about this. They do a lot better job with the evaluation. I think they do a better job of the coaches putting them through the drills, the one-on-one stuff Jeff's talking about. That film that you watch in the Senior Bowl is invaluable. Remember Ali Marpet from Hobart? I mean, we watched Ali Marpet in the Hobart tape. I keep bringing it up because of the bounce house and out in the end zone and stuff. But when you watched Ali Marpet play at the Senior Bowl,
He looked like he belonged.
yeah, there are players that are going to get opportunities that from these small schools that your tape is going to be a little bit lacking, but Senior Bowl tape might help you.
This is I went through the roster just because there's always a guy. Kyle Duggar from Lenore Ryan is another one.
Sure. Safety.
turning into a nice player for the Patriots.
Yep.
Got an offensive lineman from Fordham.
Yeah, 7 blocks of granite. Vince Lombardi's school.
Shout out to Fordham. I thought I saw a
Gregory
I saw it in a Wichita Baptist.
Yeah,
Yeah, I watched him last
Gregory
night.
Jr.
I watched him last night.
How'd he look?
You know what? It's funny. He's playing at Cliff Harris Stadium there. The old
Are you
Cowboys.
serious?
Yeah, that's where he was playing.
Nice.
But this guy, I mean, you're watching him play against Southern Arkansas, Henderson State. The guy, he looks small on tape. He's like a 5'11", 201 guy. He looks small. And it's funny because everything about him looks like that he could be a good player. I mean, he's a relaxed pedal. He's really quick. He bursts. This is what the Senior Bowl is for, though. Guys like this, the Gregory Juniors of the world, who probably should have been at maybe a little bit better, but the competition to step up. If he goes out there and you start to hear him cover and see him in the one-on-one and he doesn't look out of place, then you're even going back and you're saying, okay, I've got to know a little bit more about this guy. But I mean, this guy's really, really a natural player the way he moves. And scouts and coaches, we miss players all the time. Kids end up at places like that because they fall through the cracks. And I'm sure this kid will go out there in Mobile and he'll do just fine covering guys from Michigan and Ohio State and wherever else he has to cover guys from.
There's also a Sam Houston corner as well out there.
Which fair, and I love that. Like, you give guys an opportunity, but we're at the point, and I love this. I love it about the draft process and football in general. Like, FCS doesn't even feel like a reach to me anymore. Like, those guys are on
Thank you,
national
North
TV.
Dakota State.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Jabril Cox is a fantastic example. Made that jump to LSU.
Pinning the offensive tackle we've been talking about.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Sam Houston, I think, played in the national title game this year,
Not
right?
this year, last year.
2 years ago,
Okay.
yeah.
Or in the spring, technically. So since the last Senior Bowl, then yeah, they have won a national
that's a
championship.
quality program. So Zion McCullum, I see you, buddy. I'm ready to watch you. What would you do if I told you Will McClay took over the draft process in 2014?
You never drafted a small school guy?
We can actually we got a question.
Only Boise. That's as small as you go.
We got a question about that in Twitter on the
And
20.
you load up on those guys.
La Tech.
They've
You got
drafted-
Xavier Woods.
They've drafted 18 Senior Bowl guys in the time Will's been running the draft.
Yeah.
Senior
2015
Bowl's got a lot of good players.
Yeah.
2015 is the only year that they haven't done it. And they've drafted 6 in the last 2 years. Gallimore, Reggie Robinson, Bradley Anai, Oso Digizua, Chauncey Golston, and Jabril Cox.
I mean, there's 15 or 20 guys at the Senior Bowl that are going to be top 60 picks.
Yeah.
So
Just in my 60 guys, what I say, 12, 13, 14, whatever the number I gave you there, that's second round.
and they probably,
12
and they
is what
probably
you
have 6 first-rounders.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen all of
The
them either.
quarterbacks, like you're going to have 3 or 4 quarterbacks go.
I guess
Penning's going to
that's-
go in the first. Dotson might go in the first. The Penn State wide receiver.
Yeah.
Devin Lloyd's going to go in the first.
Yeah.
There might be 7, 8 first-round picks in Mobile.
It feels unfair. I mean, yeah, the quarterbacks will be first-round picks.
Right.
But, I don't know. That feels like cheating to me a little bit.
Using the quarterbacks?
Well, yeah. A, because the Cowboys aren't going to draft them, and B, because quarterbacks get overdrafted.
And that's exactly what's going to happen this year because it's not a strong quarterback class. I like Kenny Pickett up at the top, and Malik Willis is going to impress some people in Mobile because he's finally going to have an offensive line that blocks for him well. Willis out of Liberty, Pickett out of Pittsburgh. But it's not a good quarterback.
I'd like to use this platform to announce that you will never hear a strong quarterback opinion from me ever again. Because,
Why
damn
is
it,
that?
it's impossible.
Oh, is this in relation to Josh Allen?
Just all of them. Like, Josh Allen's the ultimate outlier. And, yeah, that was a not very good college player that couldn't throw a ball accurately that now can. And it's like
It's a shame you
evaluating
missed on that guy.
quarterbacks is so hard.
Brian's
you will
so
never,
proud of himself.
ever get a strong
I'm on a
opinion
good little
from
run
me.
right now.
You could find some tweets that I'd be really embarrassed about Josh Allen.
Let me
if you
tell you
took
what.
the time to go
You
look
talk
for
about
him.
the Senior Bowl. I think this is a big time for Sam Howell from North Carolina.
Absolutely.
Because Sam Howell came into this process as being one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. I think it's super, super important. And I think people are sleeping on him. That's my guy that I'm going to kind of champion a little bit.
He did.
I love Willis. I love what you watch the Ole Miss game, you'll fall in love with him just because of the sheer will that he played with in that football game. But Sam Howell is a guy that I kind of feel like that people were on him early, and then they got real quiet about him because North Carolina's season wasn't very good. But I think he's going to make somebody a good quarterback one day.
It's worth pointing out he lost his entire supporting cast
Yeah.
coming out of 2020. All right, actually, this pertains to a question we got for Twitter on the 20, so we're going to take a slightly early break, and we got y'all's questions coming up after this.
At AT&T, everyone, new and existing customers, get our best deals on every smartphone. Why? Because you deserve it. For turning your living room into your office and your gym. For teaching Grandma how to video call and teaching her again.
It's the button on your left, Nana. Okay, your other left.
It's not complicated. Everyone deserves something new. So AT&T is giving everyone, new and existing customers, our best deals with every unlimited plan on every smartphone, even the latest ones.
AT&T may temporarily slow data speeds if the network is busy. Restrictions and exceptions may apply.
Hi, I'm Clint Tillison with...
And I'm Jay Novacek, and we're both with...
United Ag and Turf, the official tractor provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
So, if you need a tractor to bale some hay, a mower to cut some grass, or a gator to get some chores done...
Get a John Deere at United Ag and Turf.
And then, let's get to work.
Hey, Jay, that's my line.
Well, not today.
Get to work with a John Deere tractor package that's just right for you and your budget. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com.
Before there was a draft, you could size up a cowboy by 3 simple factors: the crease in his hat, the bend of his brim, and his unbending attitude. A man Stetson didn't just protect him from what life threw at him, it projected a rugged, unstoppable spirit. Stetson hats are still American-made with pride right here in Texas. They're still the unofficial crown of all self-respecting cowboys, and Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Find a retailer nearest you at stetson.com/cowboys.
New Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. You deserve it.
I do deserve that.
You deserve decadent flavor without sugar, and a day at the beach without sand getting everywhere. And a relaxing bath that your children don't interrupt.
I deserve all that?
It's really just a visual metaphor for Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Everything you want, nothing you don't.
A visual metaphor on the radio. I do deserve that.
Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. The zero you deserve is finally here.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
It is the second segment of the draft show, which means it's time to take your questions. We got Twitter on the 20.
Twitter on the 20.
Beautiful. All right. I mentioned this before the break. I think this is the type of stuff that fascinates me. Sam wants to know, do you think this will be a harder to predict than usual first round because of the quarterback situation? Like, this doesn't appear to be a year where we're going to be debating 4 quarterbacks at the top of the round? Or do you think that narrative is going to change as we get a better look at some of these QBs?
I think this will be a hard first round to predict because, it's not even just the quarterbacks to me. I think ranking the offensive linemen is really hard. Like, I think Bryant told me the other day what his is, and I'm like, not me. I think the offensive tackles, the order that they're going to go in, don't know. The quarterbacks, who's going to prefer them? How many teams are going to think one of them's worth a first-round pick? Don't know. Who's the best pass rusher? That's up in the air. How many pass rushers are worth a first-round pick? That's up in the air. There's not a dominant defensive tackle in this draft class that's a pass rusher. There's so many unique things about this draft class that I actually like picking around 24. I might like to pick at like 19 or 20, but I like picking at 24 because you get to let everybody else figure it out.
I was going to say
a good player.
This, and maybe you would say this every. No, you wouldn't. This feels like a year where picking 24th isn't the end of the world.
No.
Like, that kind of feels like where the sweet spot starts to come into play, or am I just being biased?
No, I think you're right, because right up at the top of the draft, you have a couple names. But other than that, it's not like it's a 8 or 9 pick deep where you're hoping a couple of those guys fall. Last year, you were sitting at 10, and you were hoping those corners fell. Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn, you were hoping those guys fell because they were top 10 talents, and then, of course, you ended up finding Micah Parsons along the way. This year, there's not that deep or it's deeper than it is top heavy in terms of the draft talent. You have the Hutchinsons up at the top. You have the Thibodeaus, a couple other players probably sprinkled in that mix. But after that, it could really go anywhere. It just ends up falling. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out, we've done mock drafts each of the last 2 years and going all the way into the third round. 2 years ago, so 2020, we got 8 of the first 10 picks right. in our mocks all the way through. So it was pretty predictable, right? Last year we got the first 4 picks right, and not a single one after that.
Yeah, everything.
Because as soon as one thing falls,
everything went to hell pretty quick.
Everything goes a completely different direction, and I assume that's probably going to be the case this year. You're probably going to get maybe the first 2 or 3 picks right, and then somebody's going to surprise you by taking a player, and then all of a sudden it's going to domino from there on out.
I think the unpredictability of the round, what's going to happen ahead of you, is going to be in the future of the 2 New York teams and what happens in Philadelphia. I think those teams are going to dictate what direction this draft goes.
Just based off of the pure draft capital that
just
they
the
have?
numbers they have.
And we can throw this back. If you remember Tuesday, Tim wanted to know our thoughts on the situation with Philly.
Yeah.
They have pick 15, pick 16, and pick 19.
All ahead of you.
What do you think is more realistic? I mean, if they draft 3 guys and hit on them, they could revamp their team in an offseason. Or knowing Howie Roseman, do you think it's more likely that they use that capital to move around?
I kind of feel like that they're going to try and move around a little bit.
Making 3 picks.
Yeah, I don't think so. That's why I said
he's making either 1 or 2, or he's making 11. With those 3.
I could see the Giants holding in there. I could see the Giants making 2 picks. Their 2 picks. I could see the Jets maybe making one of the picks and then trying to move for some more. Philadelphia's going to move. Philadelphia's not going to sit there.
What if they go trade for a quarterback?
Well, that's I mean, that's a possibility there. But I think that this draft completely is going to be not controlled. But when we figure out what the Giants are going to do, again, I think the Giants are going to stay there and pick. The Jets. I think the Jets can move one of those picks.
New GM though, it's not Gettleman, who loves to stand.
No,
stand
they
pat.
need players.
Yeah,
they're going to need players. That's what happens when you walk in that building in New York. Even if you're a new general manager or whatever, history starts to tell you that we need players. Our roster. Look at our roster. We need players. That kind of thing. That team's in cap trouble too. What'd they carry over, Jeff? $13,000 the other day.
They are like really top. Like they have a lot of money committed to such a bad roster.
Sure, that's what I'm saying. So to me, that's where they're at right now. But this draft will be hard to predict just because of those picks owned by those 3 teams, if they move, if they stay. I think that there's some teams that are locked into committed to looking at quarterbacks. I think Davis Mills playing better in Houston kind of gave them a little bit of a better understanding, depending on who they get as their head coach is another thing. But to me, the Giants, they're trying to talk themselves into thinking that their quarterback's good. But they might not.
They doubled down on it.
Yeah, we kind of talk about this thing not being a very good quarterback draft. All it takes is one team believing that we don't know what we're talking about, and that happens a lot.
Leo's going to make this really simple. He says, pick 24, Nakobe Dean or Devin Lloyd. Nakobe Dean's linebacker out of Georgia. Devin Lloyd from Utah, if you're not familiar.
One's 6 foot, one's 6'3", and they both play their ass off. And they both tackle, they both run, they both finish. If you went either way with those guys, it just depends on what you want. If Dan Quinn stays, and with the way the coaching thing's going right now, Dan's you got one more team I think that you have to dodge, and we'll see. But Dan's played with shorter linebackers before. Mm-hmm. He has.
He drafted Deion Jones.
He did. He sure did. So to me, I think it's open to either one of those guys. I would be super, super happy with. It just depends on, you want a 6 foot guy or 6'3" guy.
Jeff said Dean. Brian's a coward. Kyle, what do you think?
Didn't say it was.
Which one did you pick? Which one did you pick?
I'll take the Georgia kid. I have him over him. If we're doing that, I was just telling you.
He wanted to know which one.
I would take Dean as well. But which one do you feel like would pair better with Micah Parsons? Because
either one.
Either one's going to play
either
fine.
one. That's what I was trying to say.
They can both cover. They can both blitz.
Until I was called a coward, but either one's fine.
It's not fun being antagonized by the host.
Not at all. Not at all. Who would you take? Have you looked at either one?
I haven't seen him. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I've watched a
part
lot
of the draft show. You got to watch these guys.
I've watched a lot of Nakobe Dean just watching Georgia football.
Yeah.
He is a very good player. I would like to have him on this team.
Nakobe Dean is either like Roquan Smith, or if you like more recent names, you're watching the draft show, I think Nakobe Dean is a supercharged Nick Bolton that can blitz.
Sick.
That's what I think he is.
I love that.
Like Nick Bolton isn't the athlete that Nakobe Dean is, But Nakobe Dean does the same thing Nick Bolton did a year ago, which is when the ball is snapped, he's the first one moving. He's going the right way every time.
And I just, again, from watching Dean, not saying he can like rush the passer the way Micah can.
He can blitz.
No, but
Nobody can stay in front of him.
He can live in the backfield, and he's done it at the highest level of football. Ruben, which I'll just throw it to y'all. You tell me. We talked about this in the first segment. The Cowboys do not really draft small school guys. Like Louisiana Tech and Boise are about as small as they've gone in the Will McClay era. Ruben wants to know, like, is that good? Should they be taking a harder look at guys like that? And I think my answer to that would just be, I think they do. Like, it's not like they don't look at those guys. They just use school pedigree as a tiebreaker, right?
Well, I think the tiny school thing is, how many of those guys are getting drafted. The odds are that any of the 32 teams aren't going to draft a really small school guy on any given year. So I think it probably is a preference because you're more comfortable watching the level of competition of the bigger school guys. And I think that makes sense for an NFL team because the idea of the draft, I think, or a big part of it, is minimizing risk. You want to have the best odds of the dude being able to play in the NFL and help your team as you can. And a great way to minimize risk is to feel better about the tape you saw. So I get it. If there's a small school guy that you love, like I bet Will McClay would pick DeMarcus Ware. I bet he would.
Yeah.
I bet they could get that right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes sense to lean hard into the bigger schools because, and that's why the Senior Bowl is so important. The little school guys, when you line up against Penn State, whoop them. When you line up against Michigan, whoop them. That will get an NFL team to go, okay.
And DeMarcus Ware was a Senior Bowl guy, right, Brian?
Yes.
I bet he smashed it.
I bet
he was great.
If Will drafted a small school guy, I bet he'd be a Senior Bowl guy. I don't know if they would draft a guy like that purely off college tape. What do you think?
The only, and I'm just looking at my notes, the only really small school guy that I have that's a Senior Bowl guy in the first two rounds is Penning from northern Iowa. That's the only guy I've got that's small school guy. Now I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know if they take him, but that's Jeff's right. If Penning's got to show up and prove. You can watch him play against Iowa State. And it wasn't always pretty. So if he goes out there and flops around and stuff like that against some of these really good rush ends that I was talking about earlier, then that kind of gets you that, well, maybe he's not all for this. And I think that does influence you when you watch the Senior Bowl stuff if you're a small school guy.
From a more general standpoint, you might be able to speak better to this, Brian, but as a scout and in a scouting department, you're always taught don't look at the helmet, right?
Yeah.
It's scout the player, not the team.
Sure.
But there is a level of comfort for a scouting department whenever you do have success drafting a certain type of player from a certain type of program, right?
Yeah. I was taught that he better walk on water. If it's a small school guy, he better walk on water.
If there's bounce houses in the end zone.
If there's bounce houses in the end zone, you got a shot too. But yeah, I mean, the guys that walked on water, if you go back through history, the guys like a Jerry Rice, a Walter Payton, schools like that. Jackson, Todd, I almost said Todd McNair. McNair from
Steve McNair.
Steve McNair from Alcorn.
Now,
those guys walked on water.
Is walking on water only for early round picks, or is that throughout the draft?
I think the early round. I think the early round pick because you're gonna hit on a if you're lucky and if you draft a small school guy like an Andre Reed from Kutztown State or something like that.
Brian, shout out our friends on the other side of the pond.
Yeah.
Hello.
They are. I love those guys on the other side. They ask you questions?
Our buddy Lorne from our UK contention.
I love those folks over there, by the way. And I hope that the Cowboys with Jacksonville being on the schedule.
Let us all.
I hope the league comes out and says here just in the next couple of weeks that we're all heading back that direction. That would be a lot of fun.
From your lips
so
to
you guys
God's
can
ears.
Drink?
Oh my gosh!
Yes,
yeah,
like fish. I didn't know that. Supposedly, again,
they know their football over there too.
It's early days. David Ajavo, the Michigan end, is Scottish born.
He actually is Nigerian and lived in Scotland.
Wound up in Scotland.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Lauren's worried that Randy Gregory is going to leave. Do we think David Ajavo is a realistic candidate in the 24 range?
I kind of think that, to me, we talked about the way I would have it is because
I guess no.
Kaloftis, Walker,
Give me some schools. Karlaftis is Purdue.
Right, and then Walker's Georgia.
Okay.
And then Ajavo, as you're talking about, is Michigan. I kind of feel like that would be the order I would have them in if those three were available. I think Karlaftis is a hell of a player from Purdue. I really, really do. Walker, I think Walker's got some ability. I kind of like how they move him. They have him as an end. He could play inside too for you. I think his pass rush stuff is not as good as what I would see in Karlaftis if that was given.
I love the way Purdue in my brain is just the epitome of like a 6-6 playing at 11 a.m. Big Ten team, but like they've always got a badass or two.
They knocked out, if you remember,
and they always beat
off,
somebody.
They knocked off number 2 Iowa and number 3 Michigan State last year.
There's such spoilers in the Big
They
Ten.
murdered Ohio State a couple years ago.
Yeah, Tyler Coyle from last year too, undrafted free agent.
Rondell Moore.
Yeah.
They got a receiver. I can't think of his name right now. I don't know if he's in
the draft this year.
I think he's in this class.
David Bell.
There we go. Thank you. John wants early thoughts on safeties, guys that can maybe play single high. Kyle Hamilton's obviously the big one. I don't know if that's realistic.
I saw a deal where he's going to Philadelphia, by the way, on like a mock draft. I think it was Bucky Brooks's mock draft. They had a run there where Philadelphia.
He dropped all the way to 15.
Philadelphia took 3 guys in a row. I went, oh damn,
that's hard for me to
one
imagine.
of those deals.
Was it Linderbaum?
No, it was Linderbaum, Hamilton. I mean, he had all 3 of them.
19 was a bad pick. I forgot who it was.
Yeah.
Any other safeties that you like?
Bad pick
besides Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah, Jeff, you watched the kid from Michigan, didn't you?
Yeah, Daxton Hill. Daxton Hill's a really good player. I think Daxton Hill at Michigan is probably a guy that's going to go somewhere between pick number 20 and pick number 35 or 40. Mm-hmm. He plays the slot and he plays safety for Michigan. He ain't scared of contact in any way, shape, or form, and he runs like the wind. Like a lot of guys, you don't get a perfect picture of the NFL player that he's going to be because of how teams use guys in college. But Daxton Hill is a guy that I think is going to offer somebody the versatility to be one of your deep half-field safeties, maybe a free safety.
Can he play the nickel?
Play the nickel.
Oh, absolutely.
He does on tape.
Yeah.
But so many college guys in the nickel on tape, I want all of them to go to the Senior Bowl. Because so many college guys, when they play the nickel on tape, they are stand and wait and chase.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that kind of coverage ain't going to work in the NFL, but it's kind of what they do, where they're just like, I'm waiting. I try to touch you, and I chase you. But, I mean, he's got makeup speed for days. Daxton Hill flies.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really cool about him, and I think Jeff nailed him, by the way. That was a really good report on him because, to me, he's one of those guys that you can watch him, and you talk about chase, and they put him in the slot, and he'll go inside. I think that's – if you get me a defensive back that could play running inside and deny the football, how many times have we seen big plays given up inside because the corner or somebody can't cover a guy going inside? This guy can do that, and I think he did a really good job of avoiding penalties, especially when he had to go inside and cover. You could get a little grabby or come over the back and stuff like that. But this guy's got some toughness to him. When you watch him, when he reads the routes and it's all of a sudden the ball's coming his direction, he's going to tackle. I mean, Michigan State running back, the kid Walker tried to run over him.
Didn't work.
It didn't work. He said
technically he did fall backwards,
but he
was not scared.
He wasn't.
That
Yeah,
giant man at full speed.
That guy hit him. I mean, it was a good collision there. I thought he was a wrap-up tackler. So, kind of a smart guy, finishes plays. It could play in coverage. When I first watched him play, he was one of the first guys I'd seen play. I thought this was Dallas's pick, and I didn't know when Dallas was going to pick. I was thinking Dallas was going to pick at 29 or something like that. I thought this was the guy. I thought this was who they were going to take.
I think they have a better shot at doing that now that Dan Quinn could potentially be back. Even more because he fits that system almost flawlessly.
If they lose all their safeties too,
that's the thing.
Yeah. Assuming it, and I have no reason to doubt Tom Pelissero. He knows his stuff. But assuming that's true, I'm excited to have some clarity about the type of guys we're going to want to look at.
Exactly, and it'll help us going into Mobile next week too, because then we can look at that guy and that guy and that guy and say that's a Dan Quinn guy. Safety, just my overall thought is Kyle Hamilton's going to be gone before you're even close to 24. You've got 2 names, and it's Dax Hill and Brisker, who we talked about in the first show from Penn State, who will be out at the Senior Bowl. And then, to me, there's a big drop-off before you see the next couple guys like Sion from Georgia and McKinley from Oregon, Cross from Maryland. There's a significant gap So maybe if you don't take one of those two names and it works out to where you even talk about a safety in the first round, which with this front office we know is not necessarily the case.
Wouldn't bet on it.
Then you're probably not going to see a
trade down?
safety name until 3 or 4.
Is Kyle over there trying to get Captain Trade down to ride?
Not for a safety.
We're trying to add a pick, get a safety? Huh?
If you want to add a pick, maybe. But
we can move this bad boy back to 31, 32.
I was about to say, keep it in like the 20s.
safety.
I don't want to go out of the first round to pick up a safety in the 80s.
I love a good segue. I hate this question, but my job is to field the questions that you send me. So, Rob.
Oh, and you're telling him you hate his question to his face.
I do hate his question, but he wants to know if the Cowboys were to trade Amari Cooper this offseason, what kind of compensation do you think they could get? That I assume he's asking because you would imagine it would help their draft capital.
Second round.
That's all it would take?
I'll totally guess second round at most.
At most.
And maybe less.
Age, injury issues.
I think the injury history is something that's very relevant here.
I think his compensation is fair for the player, right? He's a $20 million player. He's a $20 million talent.
Which part of what made him so valuable the first time he was traded is very young for an NFL vet. I mean, he's still young for a guy that's been in the league 6-7 years, but not as young as he was, and he wasn't on a huge contract, whereas now he is.
Yeah, now he's fairly compensated, and I think if you just add up that he's a nicked up guy, and like we can pretend that the Oakland stuff doesn't matter and no teams care about it, but even going back to the Raiders stuff, I think there's people around the league that look at his demeanor and won't be interested. I think there's some teams that would just be like, we're not going to give up much. Remember, people were talking about, does he even like football?
Yeah. Probably. Is this a glass eater? No.
Probably unfair, in my opinion, but valid. Like, that's a valid thing that I think
What's unfair about it?
I think
that we think he loves football.
Yeah.
But I'm projecting other people's thoughts.
Y'all talk to Amari every week. I mean,
wonderful guy to talk to because he's got a lot of other interests.
I think he's been available the entirety of the time that
he lines up and plays. You have trouble getting him the ball.
Yeah, no, exactly. Amari Cooper having a disappointing year this year, I do not put on Amari Cooper.
Not at all.
I don't personally.
That's why I think second round has to be, even though it's probably the max. I wouldn't accept anything less, honestly.
Are y'all interested in doing that?
No, not even a little bit.
I think
I'm with you.
I'm not even.
I think
Pretty Cook?
Yeah.
Nah.
No, we've talked about this. No, but you asked the question.
No, I know.
That was a second round pick, and I think that's where we're at. You know, I think the thing. Let's be honest though, too. If we went back and did all our shows from the summertime, we were all talking about, could this receiving crew all have 1,200 yards and all that? I'd say it's probably a little disappointing.
Yeah.
I think all the projections we had for this group was disappointing.
But do you put that on the player or do you put that on the coaching staff?
Players.
You do?
You got
players are going to go out there and play.
There's a chunk of it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't sit there and just say that it's all Kellen Moore's fault. You know, you can't. I mean, you got to blame Dak. You got to blame the receivers. How about availability? He missed 3 games because he got sick.
I forgot about that when I said he's been available. I imagine that's something that frustrated the front office. Which
absolutely it did.
They haven't really shied away from.
They have not.
I still don't think you make this team better by getting rid of your best, who I think is still your best receiver.
Do you feel like they use him the right way?
Not right now.
No.
Okay.
But you can.
Do you trust anybody across the hall that I'm going to do it to you now? You trust anybody across the hall to get him the ball?
At this particular moment, I don't feel confident about it.
Yeah.
But it's January. We got time. I can talk myself into this
again. We said that in
I was about to say, you're going to do it again. You're going to show up at Oxnard.
Week 8 and week 10 and
all right.
week 12.
We're getting very existential here. We're getting depressing. So let's not do that. Let's take our second break and come back and talk more Senior Bowl.
Want to use what the pros use? How about the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black? Right now you can get the Jack Black Starter, a curated collection of Cowboys locker room favorites for just $10 with free shipping. The starter includes 4 Jack Black skincare favorites plus a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Go to getjackblack.com/Cowboys and use the code word TEAMJB. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys. The Jack Black Starter, $10, free shipping.
At AT&T, everyone, new and existing customers, get our best deals on every smartphone. Why? Because you deserve it. For turning your living room into your office and your gym. We're teaching Grandma how to video call and teaching her again.
It's the button on your left, Nana. Okay, your other left.
It's not complicated. Everyone deserves something new. So AT&T is giving everyone, new and existing customers, our best deals with every unlimited plan on every smartphone, even the latest ones.
AT&T may temporarily slow data speeds if the network is busy. Restrictions and exceptions may apply.
Hi, I'm Clint Tillison with...
And I'm Jay Novacek, and we're both with...
United Ag and Turf, the official tractor provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
So, if you need a tractor to bale some hay, a mower to cut some grass, or a gator to get some chores done...
Get a John Deere at United Ag and Turf.
And then, let's get to work.
Hey, Jay, that's my line.
Well, not today.
Get to work with a John Deere tractor package that's just right for you and your budget. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com.
Before there was a draft, you could size up a cowboy by 3 simple factors: the crease in his hat, the bend of his brim, and his unbending attitude. A man's Stetson didn't just protect him from what life threw at him, it projected a rugged, unstoppable spirit. Stetson hats are still American-made with pride right here in Texas. They're still the unofficial crown of all self-respecting cowboys, and Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Find a retailer nearest you at stetson.com/cowboys.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Welcome back to the final segment of the draft show. Final draft show before the Senior Bowl gets underway, which, without further ado, we talked about this in the first segment a little bit, but just out of curiosity, for my own sake, let alone anybody listening to this, I would love to get y'all's thoughts, again, on this roster, just pet cats, for lack of a better term. Like I said, I'm going to fall in love with somebody this week. I still remember thinking Braxton Miller was a much
Man, his footwork in the wide receiver drills was incredible.
I thought he was going to take over the league. So I can't wait to get hurt again. But I would love to hear some pet cats. So let's just go around the table. Brian, I'll start with you. Just give me 1 or 2 guys that you're really excited.
I'm really interested in these defensive linemen. And when you start to talk about Jermaine Johnson, Cam Thomas, those guys. I mentioned Mathis from Alabama, Hall from Houston. You know, to me, this might be one of those those sneaky things, those sneaky needs that we like to talk about. If whatever happens with your defensive tackle situation, whatever happens with Randy, what happens with the cap with, with Tank. You know, they might be looking at 24 and keeping a really broad, open mind about, hey, best player. But these edge players, I think there's quite a few of them, and I do love the kid. I do love Johnson, and I do like Cam Thomas myself. So keep an eye on that. I know Sanders is a kid out of Cincinnati that has got some interest from some folks. So it's got a pretty good little flavor of defensive linemen. So that's a position I'm going to kind of be focused on overall.
Cam Thomas out of San Diego State.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Writing that down.
Yeah. It's a good one to look at. He'll be. What's going to happen is he's going to go on. You'll see him in the one-on-one stuff, and he's got a guy that's probably going to be winning quite a bit because he's kind of a slippery, but like really good technician, slap hands, rip, pull, that kind of guy. So I have a feeling he'll be able to break some of these tackles down.
Kyle, what do you got?
I've got a couple guys, and I tweeted out a list of 5 last night that I was excited to watch, and apparently 3 of those guys may not actually play this week.
Good job, Kyle.
Pretty
way to be a
damn
top-notch
disappointing.
journalist.
Yeah, it was disappointing.
Disheartening.
I've got some later round guys that I kind of want to look that may have a chance to jump. One of which is a Dallas guy, Reggie Roberson Jr., wide receiver from SMU.
He's fun.
He's very fun. Great hands. He can high point the football, makes catch in traffic. He's a good route runner. I'm excited to see him go up against these bigger corners and guys that are able to challenge him from a speed and a physical standpoint. And I think he's got a chance to jump. There is another SMU guy, Danny Gray, that'll be a part of the Senior Bowl, but I'm really keeping my eyes on Roberson, who's been at SMU for quite some time. I feel like I was calling games of his back in like 2018 when I was in school still. So
you were in school in 2018?
Yeah, let's not talk about it.
Lord. Let's not.
Let's not.
I would say outside of that, I want to see some of these, of course, offensive interior linemen. Zion Johnson, who brought up the other day. Leviticus Smith. I said that first name wrong. Leticus. I don't know how to say
I was
his
about
name.
to
My
say,
man, if you're
Virginia
in this room,
Tech.
I want you to know the odds are you're going to be the pronunciation.
I know, and I
You're
haven't
gonna do
gotten
that
to this
work.
point yet. That's why I'm excited to see him. Stuber from Michigan, which I think I said his name wrong too. Spencer Burford from UTSA. Offensive lineman heavy this week. And honestly, I think the one-on-one drills of the trenches is going to be where I'm planted for the majority of the week.
Jeffrey, what do you got?
I have 4 names that, when I was looking over the rosters this morning, are really, really interesting to me. I love Baylor safety Jalen Petrie, but I have no idea if he can cover, as I said earlier. But he is like the leader of a pack of rabid dogs on that Baylor defense. You watch them play, and you're like, oh, my God, everybody out there is trying to break people on every play.
It's Dave Aranda.
I miss you, Dave Aranda.
Yeah.
And Jalen Petrie played the nickel, but a lot of times he walks down and plays the edge, and he doesn't mind wrestling offensive linemen. So he's a quote nickel that will hold the edge against offensive tackles.
You're kind of describing Jaron Curse a little bit.
Maybe he's a much smaller version. He's
Okay.
6 foot and I don't know, 200 maybe. Right
Is he
around
like
there.
Winfield at all from Tampa?
No, because
No.
Winfield was a single high. I don't know if
Yeah.
Petrie can cover, so that's why I'm interested. I want to
Well,
see
I'm
what he
saying
looks like. I think he's
neither
gonna be
can
able-
Winfield if you watched him play the other day. I mean, Winfield plays
true.
down
I mean,
and
Winfield plays single high.
He was good in college.
Yeah.
I haven't been keeping close tabs on him in the pros.
he got run by the other day.
I think Petrie is probably he's playing man coverage against the best receiver in football.
They called a zero blitz in a
And they
do or
trusted
die
him to cover.
situation.
And they trusted him to cover.
That was their fault.
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant, Cincinnati's other corner.
Yeah.
Yes.
I watched him last night. Sauce Gardner's going to get all the headlines, and rightfully so, because he is the best corner on that team. But Kobe Bryant was a fifth-year senior that took advantage of the extra year you could play because of the COVID deal. And he's another big old corner that when they let him step up in front of people and play press, and when he gets to play man that way, you're like, holy cow, there's something there. So Kobe Bryant, Cincinnati corner, and 2 defensive tackles that I think are interesting for the Cowboys. Fedarian Mathis at Alabama and Devontae Wyatt at Georgia are 2 guys. Absolutely
I haven't seen Wyatt yet.
Wyatt's funny because he's 6'3", 315. And so to most people, you'd hear that and you'd be like, oh, a one technique. Well, he played at Georgia
And
where they had a 360-pound one technique, so he was the 3. And his get-off at that size is really good. Like, the stats aren't great, but the tape, when you see a play where he has the opportunity to, hey, we're attacking on this play, you can get off the ball, Devontae Wyatt at 6'3", 315 has an awesome get-off.
You know what you mentioned about, and you mentioned Mathis from Alabama. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the highest rated one technique over Davis.
Wow.
I know Davis. Everybody's
You
talking
can pass rush.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Davis is really more of a 2-down player, and I bet you that Mathis on people's board is going to be higher than Davis.
What do you think Davis's range is? Because I know people are enamored, and I'm not trying to diss his ability as a player. He's
18
great.
40.
Okay, I wonder how much that his limitations as a 2-down guy will affect his draft stock.
Is there anybody? Okay, say for example, if he's on the board and it's Davis, Dean, it's maybe one. It's Dean.
Easy.
Is there anybody that you would take him over? Say Dean and Lloyd got knocked out of here. Was it one of these corners that would be on the board? One of the safeties that were on the board? One of the wide receivers on the board?
I have a lot of people so far that I would take over Jordan Davis.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Including Trayvon Walker, George Karlaftis, the Purdue defensive end.
I could just
I think
those are guys you would take over.
That's what I'm saying.
I'd take Daxton Hill over Jordan Davis.
My exercise right now is a lot of people are going to ask us about Davis.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys, what I'm trying to tell you is there's a lot of guys at 24 that we would take over Davis.
So I straight up think he'll probably be a 2nd-round pick if I had to guess right today. And it's interesting.
Well, his tag, he to me, like Jeff's talking about, he said 18. He might be that last guy you have in the first round. If you have 19 or 20 names in the first round like you traditionally do, he would be probably the guy with the grade of 119. That last guy, where 120 would be the first player in the second round. He might be the 119 guy.
Is he the most high-profile nose tackle since Vita Vea, or am I forgetting anybody?
No, because everybody else is pretty much 3 technique.
Any of those Alabama cats that football team has.
I'm not since
those guys are all those Bama guys, like your Paynes and your Allens, and
they're super freaks.
They're not even. They are just monster freaks who I don't even.
You're talking about
position
350 to 60-pound guys,
basically.
If you guys like the Georgia defensive tackles this year, there's one at Georgia that'll be here next year.
Yeah.
That's 8 times better than both of them combined. Jalen Carter's a freak show.
Well, let's worry about that in January.
Jalen Carter, I'd trade my first-round pick right now and my second-round pick
just to know
for
he's
the rights to Jalen Carter next year.
Wow.
I'll give up my 1 and my 2.
Wow. Turn in the card already?
Yes.
Wow.
Done.
I love it.
Keep in mind that that's coming from Captain Trade Down.
Yeah,
too.
that's true.
Jalen Carter's a stud.
Could I throw one more name out there for Senior Bowl?
Of course you can. Yeah.
Tariq Woolen, corner from UTSA. And I had a couple people, I had a couple people that tweeted me about him because I have Conference USA because of the ESPN stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
He didn't get to play in the game that I called of UTSA this year, but I watched his tape. They call him Reek the Freak. 6'4", 205 pounds, switched to cornerback for 2 seasons, and automatically was the best corner in the conference. And that wouldn't really, it's Conference USA, so there's a limitation there. But he is just a freak of a player, and he's going to be at the Senior Bowl. I think he could go from being a 4th-round guy, 5th-round guy to maybe being in the conversation of early day 2.
Maybe circling
6'5",
6'4",
6'4",
circling that name because of Dan Quinn.
Yes,
Dan Quinn's like
that's kind of what I wanted to bring it up about.
He can tie his shoes standing straight up. Let's go.
I think playing corner for 2 seasons, he's better than Deshaun Wright is right now. Then, that's kind of a bold statement, but
me too.
Yeah.
Just took a shot at a guy for no reason, and I apologize just now.
I have a bad habit of doing this, because I can't think of a position that's less interesting to the Cowboys. But I do really like Tyler Beatty, the Missouri running back. He's going to be a headliner down here, right? He's like all SEC.
Maybe.
Give me James Cook.
Yeah, James Cook's going to be up there.
Can I pick him mid or
Brian
late?
Robinson from Alabama.
Brian Robinson's a good player.
Brian Robinson came on real strong.
Yeah. Abram Smith from Baylor.
I've only looked at one.
Yards.
I've only looked at one running back in this draft so far, and it's Walker from Michigan State.
It's not something that I think you need to worry about. At least
no, I'm going to do them all because
you're
going to have to put your board together. I'm just interested to see when they. But to me, if you could find the guy that can do all 3. That's always the trick. Can he run, block? Can he catch? I think in this day and age too, catching is really, really, really important.
You know who was at the Senior Bowl?
Who's that?
Tony Pollard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that. It's easy to overlook.
Your left guard might be at the Senior Bowl.
Who's that?
Ed Ingram, the LSU guard. Darian Kennard, the Kentucky guard. Your left guard might be at the Senior Bowl. Maybe your 3rd or 4th linebackers at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Quay Walker and Channing Tindall, the Georgia guys.
So you're going to watch, you're going to have the access to the tape of this later, right?
Sure.
How does this inform what you do later? Are you going to circle some of these names that stand out next week and focus in on those guys?
Oh no, I've already kind of started looking at some of these guys just because I know we were having this show, and then Monday or Tuesday, Jeff and I will come in here while your guys are on the road and have a show hopefully, and we have to know about these guys. Yeah, I think it's important that I just want to get an idea of how they play, and then how does that translate to the game, because they might not have a lot of reps. But if you see them, kind of flash.
No, I guess that's my point. And Bradley and I did this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He was like the MVP of that game.
He tore up Terrence Steele.
I guess I do not remember Steele being at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, Texas Tech left tackle just got destroyed.
That's fun.
Yeah.
But I guess that's my point, though, is whatever happens in this game probably affect your priorities coming out of it, just in terms of who you want to look at.
I think it always, when you play the Senior Bowl and you know that they've been coached by you watching the drills.
That's not true.
Game doesn't matter.
That's not true.
It's about the practices.
For our purposes, yeah, but the game does matter. Bradley and I jumped out at
Dak
that
was
game.
the MVP of the Senior Bowl when
Dak
we went, right?
was the MVP of the Senior Bowl.
He was on the opposite team of Garrett and them. See, that's where nagging those guys do a great job, where they put these teams might coach the Jets if he put some players to their needs.
Yeah, you can tell which team needs what when you look at the roster.
Yeah, he tries to help these coaches out for coaching the game. Hell, I'm going to get you a look or two of these guys. I think that's a smart thing.
I just realized we're going to have a chance to hang out with Dan Campbell.
Yep.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Find some kneecap biters.
Yeah.
Whoever's coaching the national team appears to be the team that would be interested in offensive line because they got Zion Johnson, the
I believe
Boston
that's the
College
Jets.
guard.
I believe that's the Jets.
Sala and company.
Yeah.
They got the Minnesota tackle.
Two really good head coaches in terms of personalities, but could not be more different, which will be fun.
I guess I don't know Robert Sala's personality. He seems kind
of reserved.
I was going to say he seems very low key. I know everything I need to know about Dan.
And then Dan Campbell's going to have some fun.
I love Dan Campbell.
I'm interested to see the contrast in the two practices and see if there's
just
any
the way that
Campbell's will be more violent.
I would imagine so.
Maybe some like bull in the ring and stuff like that.
Dan Campbell will break every rule. He'll be banned from the Senior Bowl.
I doubt that very much, but we'll see. And that's all the time we have. So. Yeah, we'll figure out what next week's gonna look like. Kyle and I.
There'll be somebody in here. We'll be doing.
Kyle and I
here.
will be in Mobile. Brian and Jeff will be here. We'll find a way to make it work. So we will have plenty of Senior Bowl content and other draft content coming your way next week. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to y'all next time.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!